what kind of a woman would be attracted to you. So you're going to be wearing tights, like a brown boy in tights, big thighs, like they're going to laugh at you.
I'm not saying I've done those things, but I'm not saying that I haven't done those things.
I was so shocked by what I was listening to. Thieves and liars.
I'm definitely a U-hauler.
Sometimes it can feel like people are reinforcing those stereotypes through those compliments.
Stereotypes. Well, this is a good one.
Some of the first stereotypes I came across were about, I think, lesbians moving really quickly. I think that stereotype is a little bit true.
I have a friend who's a lesbian who moved in with someone after 2 weeks, and surprised that didn't work out. But I definitely feel those urges.
There's so many stereotypes about bi people. Some of them are based in some sort of reality. I like to talk about how bi people are confused, right? And the only thing I'm confused about is how I pay my tax. So I'm not confused about my sexuality, but there's plenty of other things that I'm confused about. There are lots of the stereotypes that we cheat, that we are indecisive, that we're lying. Those things are all completely false. And those things are said by people that don't understand us. The second you say bi, there's a list of words that might come to your mind.
When people come across me and they see me dressed like this, it's not really surprising to them. But then if I tell them I dress like this at the moment, but tomorrow I might want to wear a dress or that sort of thing, they just don't really get that part. I think there's a stereotype of a non-binary person to always dress kind of masculine or unisex, and there's not always a lot of room to play with, the fact that, I'm gender fluid, I flow through all genders, which includes femininity and masculinity and, things that don't even have a term really.
The first kind of stereotypes about gay men is the sissy for me, the idea of the kind of effeminate, kind of signalling gay man, and this notion of if I can act sissy in public, then I will attract other gay men to me.
Before I came across any literature, I had no ideas about. I didn't know what a lesbian was.
And when you finally did come across lesbians, how were they often portrayed?
Pain. It was going to be pain, sadness, frustration, bad outcome, probably commit suicide or, be killed by someone's husband. It wasn't good.
The astrology queer girl, the tarot card queer, the cats, and adopting a dog within 2 months of being together. I grew up religious, so everything was the Bible says this and that, and now I'm well, my tarot card said you need to consider your long-term plans. You're probably really emotional right now. Also, Mercury is in retrograde and we're in the middle of a financial crisis.
And the thing that people spoke about lots of was AIDS, and HIV, and I think that was the only association I was aware of. If you're gay, you're gonna get HIV and die, and so there was a lot of fear, and lots of fear, definitely within the church, being told that anything queer or a man laying with a man is wrong. Those kinds of things really weighed heavy on my spirit because I really knew that I was queer, yeah.
Some of the first stereotypes people would immediately think of associated with gay men would be that we're promiscuous, we love RuPaul, and we party hard every weekend. Some of those things are true, some of them not. Not all of them. No, I'm not out partying all weekend. I've got other things to do as well.
Yeah, definitely the sexualization, which is still apparent to this day. I just remember my specifically family as well having this stereotype built into their brain is that queer people have more sex, that they do sex all the time. It's just this weird negative connection between being queer means you're just gonna have all this sex and be crazy.
I think the predator was also brought home again and again in public narratives of a stereotype of a gay man who's feeding off, kind of will attack you, will take you. I mean, those terrible things around, pedophilia and kind of abuse, sexual abuse and all those kind of things that seem to be given over to our community in a way you go, actually, we've got very little, if nothing, to do with that.
One of the first things I did to sort of challenge a stereotype was probably by virtue of not doing something. I've never changed my voice, which is something that a lot of trans women do. There's probably like a somewhat identifiable trans voice, I guess you could call it, which is, I guess, what it sounds when like a deeper voice gets pushed a little higher. People have to do voice training. I think it just didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel authentic. Like, it's really low, but like, I don't know, I like my voice.
The women of the family always champion, but the men in the family were fearful boys, that really were fearful of their own femininity. And when I was in Drag Race, one of the things that Rue said to me about shame, she said, in terms of my father, she said, he can't even accept himself. How will you expect him to accept you? And why do you care? Which is true, I don't.
And was there like a specific an act you did that kind of defied these stereotypes?
I was trained to be a rugby player, and I was actually really good at rugby. And at 16, I had like a crossroads where I was offered a position in a dance company in their youth company, but at the same time I'd been offered like quite a prestigious place in a New Zealand rugby team for boys under the age of 19. And I had to make the decision for myself whether I was going to do the thing that made my dad proud and sort of created the foundation of our relationship, or defy him and do what I wanted to do. The first thing he said to me was, they're going to laugh at you. Like, there are no brown boys doing contemporary dance. Like, so you're going to be wearing tights? Like, a brown boy in tights, big thighs, like, they're going to laugh at you. And so I remember from that point and having that conversation, making the decision for myself, saying, okay, I'm going to do this as a career, and regardless of how hard it's going to be, I'm going to make sure that I succeed and do really, really well, and I'm going to prove him wrong. And I did.
It wasn't the first time but it was my very first high-profile legal action. There was a word that people misappropriated, and it was a slur against young trans women. It wasn't always a slur, it was actually short for transsexual. And being Australia, we make everything shorter, like barbecue becomes Barbie, And this word, starting with T and ending in Y, changed from an abbreviation, a harmless abbreviation, into a weapon of hate used towards young transgender women. And the problem was that, businesses were giving people out in the suburbs permission to use this word in their quiz nights and bingo nights, and when there wasn't a single trans person to be seen at them. So I sent legal letters, and I was represented by a team of women who understood the implication that this word was. It was, it was demeaning. It became a horrible word. So I took permission back. I have taken that permission back, and I have given it back to the transgender community to do whatever they want with it. If they want to call themselves that word, fine. Because that's what the black community does with the N-word. And I'm fine with that.
Yeah, there are lots of things that anyone has that can be stereotyped. And so I've also encountered the stereotypes about living with HIV. And there are so many misconceptions, and almost all of them can be debunked with science. The fact that we're treated as a threat or as a risk, even though the treatment that I'm on means that I can't pass on the virus to anyone. I have an undetectable viral load, which means the medication I'm on suppresses my viral load to an undetectable level, and I can't pass it on. There are these ideas that we've done something wrong, but HIV doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone. It can happen to absolutely anyone. And when you've been through something that difficult, you get a new vision on the world and those around you, a new compassion. And so I consider myself really proud to be one of those people.
Yeah, I think my experience with internalized stereotypes goes way back to being, growing up as like a little black girl in a really white area, and there were like a lot of kids that just hadn't ever seen a person of color, didn't have anyone in their immediate vicinity who looked like me, and that led to some really hurtful comments and like being called slurs and stuff from when I was small. And that's kind of given me strength and perspective when I've come out as queer and as non-binary, because in a way I'm already used to people not understanding my identity. And I've had to kind of toughen up and have a thick skin from an early age because of the way that my different identities intersect.
Some days where I'm, dressing more masculine, and then when I'll randomly wear a dress because that's feminine, and you get that like immediate reaction of the words that are used to describe how you look that day are so different. So when I am wearing the dress, it's always like, oh, you look so pretty today, you look so gorgeous today. And then if I'm wearing, something more masculine fitting, it's always like, whoa, you look like handsome, you look hot. And it's, you have to I've had to really I compliment myself how I want to be complimented, and I get validated through that and feel happy and good in how I look because of that, rather than what anyone else is saying, because what they're saying is just like not how I think. Sometimes it can feel like people are reinforcing those stereotypes through those compliments, even though they're trying to be nice and they are being nice. There's never any ill intent with those compliments.
And how do you navigate using labels without reinforcing stereotypes, or how do you strike a balance between the two?
It's really easy to label people in the queer community, like you have the masc and femme, which is just like so present in my world. And every time I do have to fall onto using those words because it's what the general people around me associate these words with, I always have to do this because I don't want them to think that I'm now like saying, oh, well then this means that you are this word of masculine, because it's like I struggled with that so much. And I don't want to ever put that out onto a new person. Like I don't want them to deal with that, what I dealt with. So I'm always like very careful with when I use those words. It's very last resort when I use those words.
In the queer community, especially like gay men, there's a lot of emphasis on beauty standards and the way we look. I remember I was in a gay water polo team, and like there was this pressure to be like masc and be muscular, and it was quite damaging because my body is the way it is. I'm the way I am. When I was little, I was very skinny. I felt the pressure to be a muscly Gaysian, and I would work out a lot and like would count my calories. I remember I would like force myself to eat, and I would get like bloated all the time because I wanted to like be more ripped and have like bulging muscles. And like so I had to deal with a lot of that internalized body dysmorphia, I guess.
I would say to study, because I learnt about all this through anthropology, which is the study of like humans and culture and like how we've come to where we are. And I would say, Saren, literally search up, where does masculine and feminine come from? What does it actually mean? And then do that. So the things I would tell other people to do, I would tell younger Saren to just do that.
You'll encounter bullies your entire life. Face them and understand why they're wrong, because the stereotypes are wrong. It's people saying hurtful things that they don't understand. And as soon as you understand that, you will build up your armor and build up your resilience and your ability to be able to counter those things.
I think if I was to go back and give advice to the younger version of myself that was fearful of all of the words and titles and things that people say about me, I think I will say to them now, they're not paying your bills. They won't be paying your bills. So pay those bitches no mind. That's the thing. Yeah, I really don't give a shit what people think about me.
I think my advice for my younger self would be to actually respect people who are those stereotypes, if that's the way they are, and if they are what most people would perceive as the stereotypical gay Asian, that's fine, everyone's different, they can live their lives. I think the advice that I have for myself is to be less judgmental and critical of other people.
At the end of the day, you have to live authentic to yourself. That's what's gonna make you happy. Be you for you, don't be you for someone else and someone else's idea.
If I was talking to my younger self about the stereotypes, I'd say, hey, what you're on is fine. You don't have to go be someone else or do something else for someone else. Just be you and find your own way. Just find your own way.
Is that a word, intersectionality? Okay, I did say something right.
It's a word that's quite fashionable now.
I was very aware of my difference, around the people that I was with in my childhood, in my church.
I'm the only gay in the village. I want to be the only Aboriginal gay man in your friendship circle, so you're not allowed to have anyone else.
But I was still able to have that little community of people.
I grew up one of those kind of Aboriginal Christians, You don't get a name like Wesley James Enoch by accident, it's built in there. And this whole idea of having to negotiate the church, being Aboriginal, being gay, was this weird kind of in and out and around. It's interesting then when I was growing up and I was coming out, the idea of being almost like people would say, just choose one. Just choose one. You don't have to be all of them all the time. And I was going, yeah, but what about and how about? And this idea that you've only got so much political currency, where do you want to spend it? Do you want to spend it on gay? Do you want to spend it on Aboriginal? Do you want to spend it on Reformed Christian? But that whole idea of being First Nations, being Aboriginal in this country is a really important thing for me, and that's what I kind of spend a lot of my energy on.
And do you feel like you've had to prioritise one over the other?
I've always felt that I've had limited time, limited energy, and a sense of focus. Actually, the arts were a really important fit for me, that telling Aboriginal stories, being an Aboriginal theatre maker in this case, was really important and trumped almost everything else.
When I sort of think about intersectionality, I think we all are at intersections in some way. My intersection is that I'm trans and that I am black. I have colour. And, you have to navigate both of them simultaneously. It's a double-edged sword as well, because you're doubly exotic. And you can become objectified and sexualized.
I think being queer and also a person of colour comes with the unique challenge of fighting two things at the same time sometimes, because sometimes I can never really be sure whether what I'm experiencing is homophobia or just racism, where some of the comments I encounter online sometimes marry both of them together and then they're both homophobic and racist. And that's something I've kind of been encountering in some shape or form almost all my life.
Racism came first, of course, because I was born with colour, and transitioning came later. And so that was hurdles later. But I mean, both of them are still painful, you know. They're still weapons of vilification and hate. And there are nuances for both. There is racism, which is much less than it was when I was growing up. Racism now is far more silent because you know it's illegal to be racist now. But that was definitely an intersectionality that I had to cope with. There was racism not just in the broader community, but also within the trans community. There was great racism, and within the gay community. You know, and then being trans, you know, I had to navigate, you know, in a world that the world didn't want me to exist. I had to sort of navigate that. So it was there were double barriers to that I had to overcome. You know, I think I overcame them beautifully. I don't know about you, but but I think that also leads to privilege, right?
I think, yeah, the first times is definitely just being a kid. You know, dealing with being ethnic and having ethnic family, and then feeling that I'm queer and knowing that I'm queer, but, you know, my environment, you know, wasn't supportive of that. That was definitely like my first memories.
The first time I remember having to really navigate the fact that I was queer, coming from the childhood that I came from, that being Samoan Tongan, religious, very limited in terms of conversations around just identity in general. I think it was in primary school when I wanted to play netball for the netball team. Having to have that conversation with my father, you know, it was probably one of the first times that I literally had to go figure out a way to communicate with him in a way that he would understand it from a sporting perspective, rather than it being about me being with women and girls and playing sports with people that I actually enjoy being around, if that makes sense.
A radio program manager said to me he's not sure if Australia is ready for a gay Asian pop star. I found it really confronting because I already didn't see people who look like me in media, and growing up, I didn't have a queer Asian role model to look up to, and then to hear that, it was quite upsetting. And I remember questioning whether or not I still wanted to do music.
You know, I was quite, you know, visibly a person of color at that time, but I was also visibly Muslim at that time. And I feel like when I went into the queer space of my college campus or my university campus, I feel like I wasn't automatically accepted. Like there was a lot of needless aggression towards my family for not being accepting of me, and a lot of judgment for me being okay with that. You know, they were like, I can remember someone saying, how can you still talk to them? You know, they don't accept you for being gay. You know, if they're not like marching in the streets for you and being proud of you, then they don't deserve to be a part of your life, and you should like leave them behind. I knew that I was Arab and Muslim way before I knew I was queer and trans, you know? There is a part of my identity that I've had to, deal with since birth. You know, whether it's from being aware of it in really positive spaces, like, you know, growing up with my family and having really good food, but then also like, having really big wedding parties and really big celebrations, you know, celebrating Eid and Ramadan with my family. Like those are all really important cultural holidays to me, and religious holidays as well. And for me as a queer person, but also as a person of color, it was really hard for me to reconcile with that statement and with that kind of opinion, because what it meant to me to leave my family behind was to like leave a part of myself behind, and quite a big part of myself as well, like my culture, my heritage, you know, everything that makes me would have been severely damaged if I had just completely left everything behind in the dust the way that they kind of expected me to. I think the first time I truly connected with a person who was from my exact background and who was also queer was when I met my girlfriend. And she was really special in the sense that she loved being Lebanese, and she loved being everything that I had, even though I didn't want to leave everything behind, for a long time I tried to, and it was really difficult for me to forget about everything. But when I met my girlfriend, it's like she kind of woke up that part of me that had been in hibernation for so long, that part that loved being Arab and loved being Muslim.
When I was a baby queer and I started going on dating apps, I matched with someone who was quite similar to how they identify to how I identify now. And even though we only went on a few dates, seeing in person that someone like me is out there made me feel a bit more secure in myself.
The first trans woman of colour I met was my trans mother, and she was Maori. And, I come from a remarkable lineage. Her trans mother is also Maori, and her name was Carmen Rupe. And she was a very famous trans woman from New Zealand who ran for Lord Mayor of Wellington. So, we're from a lineage of very provocative and controversial and strong trans women.
So the first queer and Asian person that I really connected with was this renowned, legendary photographer, William Yang. See, I've always felt so alone as someone who identifies as queer and Asian, and to meet someone like William who has been in the scene for so long, and he showed me all these photographs of the gay and lesbian Asian movement from the 80s that he was involved with, was so powerful to see that, that intersectionality has existed for so long and we're still part of it, but we've always been there.
Just being online, for sure, the more I posted and as my following grew, and I had certain people I recognized were commenting very often, and they were always just they feel like my little family of support that support me no matter what I've brought up with them, whether I talk about my autism or whether I talk about growing up queer in an ethnic household and being non-binary, dealing with clothing, all of that stuff. I can always go there and talk to them. Most of the time it's not safe in your real environment to be open or to learn or ask questions or anything. So I think the internet is actually very, very important for people that, they have somewhere that is safe. And sometimes it's even not safe for them to go on the internet because the only way they can go on the internet is on their family computer or within the restriction of a parent watching over. So it's still even hard in that case, which is why it is important to have access to internet.
I think the first time I really celebrated the positives and felt appreciated and embraced was watching Drag Race and seeing the documentary Paris is Burning. I think they instilled in me a deep appreciation for what it means to be both queer and Black, because there's so much culture there that is really beautiful and fun and joyful. And when I started watching Drag Race, I was instantly transported, into the sewing room, into the challenges, into the songs and dance and the way that drag queens express themselves, but especially Black drag queens.
For most POC communities, within the 60s, 70s, 80s, when to be queer but also to be of colour, there's two crosses to your name. So when most people that were kicked out of home, they created these houses, where one person would play house mother, and they would have a actual house where they would, love each other, keep each other safe, feed each other, and sort of create a chosen family. And so the House of Kong started 7 years ago when I first started drag. And initially it was just about creating a safe space, a literal safe space for people that were kicked out of home. And it grew from having 6 kids in my first year to now about 38 children that I kind of like mentor, look out for. One of them graduates this year, which is amazing. But these houses are literal chosen families that, reinforce for queer people, trans people, that they are important and that they are deserving of love.
The first time I felt like my intersectional identities were celebrated was at Westball, which is like this ballroom event in Western Sydney. Like that's where I felt like being queer and being a person of colour were not just things that were like, okay, yeah, this is a great combo. It's like, this is a fantastic combo. This is an amazing combo. We can reach a level that people can only dream of through these intersections that we have. Like, I really love that. Like, I feel like the vibe of Westball is so much about just being unapologetically yourself. It's an amazing space to be a part of because there's the music that plays is not just like the traditional like stuff you hear on the radio. There's like influence from all cultures, depending on the DJ, depending on the performance. But there's such a real feeling of kinship with everyone in that room.
I think the first time I felt like my identities, all of them under the umbrella that is Queen Kong, was embraced was probably the Logie nomination. And the Logies are obviously the Australian version of like the Emmys or the Golden Globes. Like it's our TV's big night. And so being the first drag queen to be nominated for an award, at the Logies after 63 years, that was one of the moments where I went, okay, we're being recognized, we're being seen. It might feel a little bit tokenistic, but for the most part, just being in the room for the first time, it means that there's a door being opened, for more people to come. And so, yeah, seeing my drag kids and also the ballroom community who came to watch me or came to the hotel room to have drinks to celebrate, seeing the way that they saw me in that moment, knowing that it was possible for them, that was the moment where I went, cool, the work's good and it's speaking for itself.
I didn't want to travel with a male name on my passport. And so I went to Fiji and I requested a female name. And it was really difficult. No one wanted to give me a female name. And my family stood behind me, and with the lawyers and my family's support, the government, I think, was so shocked that they gave me a female name just to get me out of the country. We're not sure if I was the first in the Pacific, but I could be. We'll find that out in due course. The Powerhouse Museum have just accepted my passport as a part of the Pacifica collection, which is good. At least I know it's safe and sound now.
I remember the first time I felt truly celebrated being queer and Asian was during Sydney World Pride, because I had created a queer Asian cabaret show which was sold out across the entire Pride season. And I created the event and I managed to bring artists from all across Australia. We had queer Asian artists from Melbourne, Brisbane, and Canberra travel to join the lineup in Sydney, which I believe it's like truly a historic event in queer Sydney history. I remember sitting down when it was all over to take it all in, because you're just so used to like working and you're on stage and you're hosting, and then I would perform, I would sing. It's non-stop, but I remember like taking a moment to breathe and taking it all in, that I created all of that. Everyone who attended experienced that it was because of me, and it was only at the time like people were, some people cried, and especially like queer Asians who might not have been in spaces like that, and folks who sometimes feel like they're not queer enough, they're not Asian enough, or they're too queer or too Asian, and they felt comfortable attending my event. And I felt really appreciated. To get that kind of response just made me really proud of being queer and Asian. The
first time I went to Mardi Gras and that first float, that Aboriginal float comes out, and there's a sense of that in this environment, being Aboriginal and queer is accepted. You know, that's only, 3-4 years ago. Like, it was really, it's late to be thinking that, but where it's something that can coexist. Being black, being Aboriginal and being gay can coexist in spaces. I've just not ever seen that very much. To be honest, I felt very embarrassed that I hadn't been part of that world, or I hadn't sought that out, or I felt really kind of ashamed. And seeing that kind of collision opened my eyes and made me think, oh man, you just, not self-hate, but a little bit kind of like you missed opportunity. You've missed something. You've missed something because you're too busy trying to protect yourself from things. You know, there's images I've seen now of friends of mine who've then kind of marched in Mardi Gras and did this bloody Captain Cook thing and did a whole range of things. And I'm going to go, oh, Jesus Christ. It's been there all the time. But for some reason, my mind didn't let that come together. Didn't let that happen. Yeah, this is like therapy.
I'll send you a bill after the interview.
Excellent, can't wait.
I think we all have our own intersections of our identities. Maybe these identities aren't as marginalized, but intersectionality still exists, and I wish people were more willing to put themselves into someone else's shoes, and also just accepting that sometimes you can't relate to an experience, but that doesn't mean that it's not valid.
Don't expect people to provide you with the answers and for people to do all the work. You know, you should do your own homework sometimes, right?
I do think the first step is to listen to us, like it is to listen to queer people of colour talk about their experiences and understand what our needs are and what we want to see more from the spaces that are supposed to be for us as well.
I feel like it's so easy for people to just and even I do this, I'm always just when people ask for advice or they're telling me about something they're dealing with, I'm so ready to give that oh, you should try this, you should do this. And I'm really trying to practice sitting there, let them talk it through, because half the time they'll talk it through and they will get to the point themselves if you just let them talk. Yeah, just creating a safe space for people to be open, somewhere they can go to talk about that thing if they don't have that at home or within their friends.
When we say amplify the voices of people of color, queer people, how can you amplify the voices of these communities or these marginalized communities at that when you don't see what they're doing day to day? You know, outside of Pride Month and Mardi Gras, which is once a year, you know, as artists, as leaders, we're doing this daily. So follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, see the content that we create so that you understand, where our next show is, where the next meeting is, whether, what you can sort of support and what you can amplify. It's really huge, TikTok, and everyone's on their phone. So make sure you add us to that feed so you can be aware with what's coming up.
The first time someone was an ally to me.
It was the first time I felt seen.
If I didn't have that, then I would have had to do it completely alone.
No matter what I did or who I was, they just loved me.
I think allyship is so underrated.
We are nothing without our allies.
My first experience of someone being an ally to me was probably my childhood best friend growing up in the church. Her name was Nana, and we were both the same age, so we met each other within the church, and the way that we met was our families lived behind each other. So there was a gate, there was a big fence in between our properties, and we met by one day I was climbing the Fijera tree in my house, and she was jumping on a trampoline, and we locked eyes and instantly became best friends. I was Xena the Warrior Princess, always, tumbling off of her trampoline, off the trees. I'd always make her either Hercules or Hades, or would be Disney princesses, and I would be Princess Jasmine and she'd have to be Aladdin. So she was very aware that I was queer and that I was different and more. She also came from the same upbringing that I came from, so she understood, what we were experiencing. She could see how I was being treated, and having someone recognize and acknowledge the struggle that you go through. There's just something about that kind of that bond that really, you can't really put it into words. Like I just have always had like an unconditional love for her.
If she wasn't in your life at that point in time, would things have been quite different for you?
I think so. I think if she wasn't a part of my life, I probably would have had a different approach or been a lot more fearful. I always say to people that I'm such a shapeshifter, and obviously this is my drag version of myself, but with her I could be whatever shape I wanted to be, and there was lots of shapes that I would put myself into that didn't necessarily fit me or feel nice. That was never the case with her.
First ally. The first time was, I just lived off Oxford Street, and at that time there used to be a lot of gay bashings, and I came out of my front door and there was a gang walking right behind me, and they were getting closer, and then this man came out of nowhere, big muscly gay man, and he said, "Oh, come, where are you going? I'll walk you to where you need to go." And the gang sort of receded and he walked me to the club, and I knew that he was protecting me, and I don't know who that man was. It made me feel safe, Now an ally is different. Our laws make us feel safe, but our allies make us feel empowered.
I feel extremely grateful, and I'm really lucky to have my best friend Priya as an ally, because she's kind of been there every step of the way, and I can talk to her about so many things, sometimes too many things, from like dates to like hooking up and like queer politics and gay sex.
I'd probably look at my parents as my first allies, as the people that just gave me unconditional love from the get-go. I remember when there was the marriage equality debate here in Australia, and then the postal vote. My parents put up a big rainbow flag on their front gate at their farm, and it's things like that. Like, I knew that they loved me, but then for them to do that and put up a big rainbow flag, it made my heart sing.
I think my first experience of someone being an ally to me is when my friends showed up with ice cream after my first queer heartbreak. That was like the first time they had like kind of openly acknowledged that I was in a gay relationship for 3 years, but that B, it was important enough to have hurt me, and that they wanted to be there to support me.
Definitely like my best friend. She was like my go-to gal. If I ever needed to like rant about anything of like queer feelings or anything like that, it was always her that I'd talk to.
The first time I experienced allyship was surprisingly actually in one of my old workplaces. We always had things that would make everyone like feel included, and it was, I think, we had Purple Day, and everyone wore a purple t-shirt. We had the option of like talking about queer experiences if we were comfortable, but it wasn't like a pressure or anything like that. And seeing that workplace kind of put their back into making the small minority of queer employees feel special on that day was really sweet. And there's so much talk about like corporate queerness, which I think is valid, but sometimes it actually means something when it's coming from a genuine place.
If someone was asking me about my boyfriend or whatever, I'd feel that I needed to say I didn't have a boyfriend and I wasn't interested in doing it, and maybe never would, and I'm a lesbian. I suppose the people who I told that to, they were allies in the sense that made no difference. They just treated me like everybody else. The fact they didn't make a fuss about it was good allyship.
Maybe the first like true ally that I had would have been my friend and old housemate Kate. What I thought was cross-dressing at the time, like she like happily like came out with me. Like I think it was her and I the first time that I like went out in public dressed that way. Very much out of her comfort zone as well, to try and help get me closer to mine. that really meant a lot and helped a lot, because it was really fucking hard to like take those first steps outside, and just having a friend there. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of people who've done that alone.
I kind of had a male teacher who was incredibly, I think he was putting me down a lot, you know. And this was still me trying to grapple with my idea of sexuality and what was important to me, and I'm, 11, 12? And this one time I just acted out so violently and got suspended from school. And a teacher, Mrs. Hong, Patricia Hong, who's no longer with us, and she said, come into my class and you can draw on the board and kind of write on the board, and she gave me space. And we didn't even have to talk half the time. She just gave me a space to come and play.
And what did that space mean for your future?
I think that space calmed me down. It gave me an expression. I went from not doing very well at school to topping the school in like language arts and maths and a whole range of other things. And it changed me, put me on a new path. And the opportunities she afforded me meant that I went into high school then and just blossomed as a human being. She brought me into her class and gave me another future, I think. That was true allyship. Finding space, being glamorous, and just giving me something that I needed when I needed it.
I think it might have been the Mardi Gras, the 40th anniversary Mardi Gras, where, as I mentioned before, I attended that, and there was a terrific outpouring of acceptance from people during that. That was quite an incredible experience. And there were young kids, you know, they weren't born when 1978, when that happened, and they were there cheering, and you could see that there was a real shift that had been happening over the years.
I was on a bi float, and at this stage of my life, I'm out as bi, I'm open with my HIV status, I'm open about everything in my life. I'm really just living as who I am, and probably for the first time in my life, it's taken a lot of hard work to get to this point. And I remember I was just up there on the float, surrounded by people who have nothing but love for me and each other. We've got something in common and then lots different. And I just had a moment of going, wow, this is the life I've always wanted.
The first time I really felt it was when I'd just come out and I was holding hands with my then girlfriend and like just walking down the street, and like, you know, the world didn't fall apart and nobody stared at us, or people were actually just like smiling and treating us like any other couple. And holding hands isn't necessarily a big deal, but it really was to me in that moment.
I lived in this small country town called Dalesford in country Victoria. And perhaps that's the first place where I felt accepted. You know, like, I mean, you know, I'm eccentric, you know, there's no getting around it. And I used to walk around the lake in white linen and parasols, and I used to just glide around in the afternoon. And people used to go, oh, who's that? And they go, oh, that's just Catherine. You know, maybe, and I just felt very safe to live there, and I was just a part of the community.
I like performed a poem in front of like a group of people, and they all really resonated with it, and it was a poem about a queer experience. It was like a bigger form of acceptance for me to have that kind of acceptance, because not only were they accepting my queer identity, they were also accepting that like my Muslim identity and my Lebanese identity and like my diverse range of experiences, making me into the whole person that I am.
I can't remember a particular moment where I felt just accepted by everyone. I do remember the moment where I went, I don't care. You know, I don't care if the world accepts me or doesn't accept me. And it was actually being with David and kind of being public with David and kissing him publicly on the streets of Melbourne and going, this is something, and going, I don't care. I think I've always been searching for acceptance. The acceptance from my mother, my father, acceptance from the Aboriginal community, acceptance from a whole range of places that would somehow nurture and support me and do all those kind of things. I think I've always been in search of that. And something clicked where I went, oh, actually, I'm enough. I'm enough. This is enough. I don't need to ask other people to validate me or make me feel safe. I can make myself feel safe. I can create the world that I want to make.
Like one of the first times I felt like accepted as just like a woman was like when somebody asked me to be on like an all-female lineup. And then it was probably sort of the same thing of somebody asked me to be on an all-queer lineup. They're like, yes, I'm a genuine queer. I'm accepted as a lesbian. I think often in like the early days I could like go out to like maybe like the Imperial or something like that, like the famous gay pub, and like in my effort to present myself as female, I think I got a fair bit of attention from like gay men who obviously thought that I was just in drag, which is like, I'm like, no, I'm the other gay. Not wrong tree.
I put on events for the queer Asian community, and feel like my work has been truly recognized and appreciated by allies in both corporate and at a council level, because we've been successful in securing funding to put on more events and more opportunities for the community. For me, that meant a lot because I've always thought that my work is so focused on the queer community and like on the queer Asian experience, and I didn't realize that, outside the community, our allies have actually noticed that and wanted to recognize that, so that was a huge deal.
As the actions have taken place and as people have pushed for it, like marriage and decriminalisation and all those things, society has absorbed us, really. And to the point where sometimes I also think I really miss that camaraderie of being a little bit, bit outside the norm, and you share your, I won't say abnormality, but you share your shift away from what most people are. We had things to achieve. We don't need to achieve them so much anymore. When you've got things to achieve, and you're working in a group toward it, like you're graffitiing the walls, or you're having meetings and you're going and marching in the street and you're opening up refuges and what have you. You're working together, achieving things. And I've forgotten what my point was, because what was the...
Yeah, no, we were talking about acceptance on a broader societal level, and you were saying...
Oh yeah, I was saying, yeah, that's really great, but I miss that. I guess it's the teamwork thing, isn't it? It's why... In a way, it's why the Matildas have become so famous, because there's a team of people working together for some purpose, and that gives you a great sense of satisfaction when you achieve things together.
I think the first time I was celebrated for being queer was like a big night out that me and my then close friends and housemates went on, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go out on Smith Street, and I was like, okay, my goal for that night was to kiss someone and I did, and just having that look when you're looking at your friend getting a drink, and you've just had a smooch on the dance floor, and you're like, oh my God, that was so hot. And I've never done that before. And yeah, just being out in a space together and having, your gay bestie be your wingman.
And were they all cheering for you?
Yeah, finally, it's only taken her 6 months.
My current roommate always corrects everyone on my pronouns and will never stop. We had a negative relationship with our past roommate, and she would always call me she, her, all the time, and my roommate that I'm still with. Like from the get-go till now has always like corrected her every single time.
I remember one old auntie, she said to me too, she looked across and she said to me, I see you, I know you, I see you, and I know who you are, and that's okay. And that was enough. It just meant I could talk anytime I wanted with them as well. And I think it's no accident that these are women, these allies are women in my life who are nurturing and caring and who have somehow dealt with what the masculine world can provide in a bad way and said, we want to free all of these young boys from this, not just the gay ones, but they all need to be freed up. And I just think, it's the most amazing thing.
First of all, I would thank them for having the courage to stand by something that they don't quite understand, but they'd like to see justice for.
I think allyship can be really daunting to people because you could be worried about doing it wrong, but as long as you're there to support the person you care about, there's no wrong way to be an ally.
You can't even generalize the entire queer experience and like how to show allyship on that general level. And I think it can be very specific to each person because I know some people are comfortable with their friend correcting their pronouns or, telling people this, telling people that, getting educated, joining them on queer events. But I know some other people it's not actually safe for them yet, or, they're still dealing with understanding that without outside pressures. So super important to reach out to those people around you and say like, what would help you? What do you need? And also just like be a normal human and search it up on the internet. Like the way people want to be like educated through people, and I'm like, oh my God, you're a grown adult. There are like, you can literally learn things yourself. So also with a bit of that.
It would be just like listening to us and reading our stories. They are there. If you Google, you can find a lot of resources. If you're on YouTube, you can watch a lot of videos. I definitely think that there is an integral first step to any form of allyship, any form of activism within any space, which is like listening and doing the work and doing the research.
My grandmother's advice to me, and something that I live by to this day, is 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. You should listen and you should watch and observe twice as much as you speak. Just listening could be a huge part of someone's healing, someone's feeling the need to be heard or seen, or even just being a vessel for someone to sort of hear their own thoughts, you know what I mean? So I think being a good ally is to be a good listener, first and foremost, yeah.
No use just being an ally and being silent. Do something that shows that you care. Because, to be honest, if you show care to someone, you never know when you need that care returned. You never know. So show it. Whatever it's going to be, just show it. Put the rainbow flag out or every other flag out. Put them all out if you need to. Just show that you care.
What's the last time I was grateful to be queer?
My first experiences have definitely been like messy and less than ideal.
How are these first experiences contributing to my gratitude to being a lesbian? Well, the fact that they occurred to begin with.
I would not have changed anything.
God, the last time I came out to someone,
I feel like my life is a constant coming out party, I'm coming out now. I'm talking to this camera and I'm coming out.
Well, I didn't actually have to come out to this person, and that was yesterday when I had my hair cut. And I told my hairdresser that I was going to be interviewed about gay stuff.
Probably the last time I probably had to come out was honestly probably with my parents, which was a little bit ago, but that was still only like 2 or 3 years ago. Coming out to mum and dad was hard because I came out to them earlier on. I kind of said this was when I first thought that I was bi, and I brought it up, and it was an interesting reaction because it was almost like it's not that they were saying it's wrong or they were like being straight up rude about it. They were just like, well, how can you be both? Can't you only be one or the other? But then the last time I came out to them, it's like I was very sure in like who I was and what I am and my sexuality and how it impacts my life and how important it is in my life. And because of that confidence within myself, I was able to like set that boundary the last time I came out of being like, okay, well, you're either in or you're out.
The last time I came out to someone would have been just 2 days ago, where I just talk about my partner. I guess that's coming out. When you just say, oh, my partner David, and you just have this conversation about partner David. And I just remember watching their face going, this will be a tell which way they go. And it just, they didn't even blink. This is someone in their, they'd be in their 30s. Didn't even just didn't cross their mind. They said, yeah, fine, whatever. Whether they know or am obvious or whatever, they just accepted it was just there. And it's brilliant because nowadays I just don't think about coming out. It's not actually a thing. I don't sit down and go, I just need to tell you something. I'm gay. Is that okay? You know, I don't do any of that stuff. I just talk about my life, and my life is with David.
I told someone that I recently got married, and they were like, oh, show us your husband. And I was like, oh, it's actually my wife. You know, like just those really small ways you come out to people who, just make harmless assumptions based on what they're used to. I think the first times I had to come out, I felt heavy and maybe even like a little bit hesitant or embarrassed, or like I didn't want to say something. Well, now it's really just a really small adjustment. It's like, it's no harder than when you're ordering a latte and you say oat milk and they're like, whole milk? And you're like, no, oat milk. You know, like that's what it's like now. Well, back then I would have been like just accepting whatever they gave me, even if they messed up my order.
The last time I came out to someone was probably really recently, because I have to come out to people a lot. Like whether it's talking to someone on the phone and I get sir, and I have to be like, no, sorry, it's like whatever, ma'am, ms, whatever you want to do. I mean, like people always feel embarrassed, I think, when they get it wrong. Oh, sorry. And like that was sort of something that I did find frustrating, is like people get it wrong and they're like super apologetic. But I think what they're actually looking for is for me to comfort them about their mistake than for them to comfort me about getting it wrong. And that can be a little frustrating, I think. But I guess it comes from a good place.
Really don't know. Like my nibblings, maybe. Like my nieces and nephews. Like I guess like the last time I had to come out is like I had to sit one of them down and be like, you know that person that you think is like my best friend. The good news is they are my best friend. The other news is they're also my girlfriend. And this is, this is kind of what I am. And they're never really surprised. Like they kind of get it, they understand. I think kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. But yeah, I think that's like the last time I would have had to like come out.
The last queer-related TV show I watched was And Just Like That. It's the sequel to Sex and the City. We have Miranda dating a non-binary comedian, and their name is Shay Diaz, and Shay is like dating other people, and one of the Charlotte's kid has come out as non-binary and has changed their name from Rose to Rock. And Charlotte was like struggling with losing her little girl, and just little things like that that we don't generally see or haven't previously seen on a show like it, because I think the more we see non-binary representation on screen, the easier it is for the general population to accept it in real life.
Yeah, so I just watched Red, White and Royal Blue, and that was really exciting because one of the main characters is a bi guy, and it's quite funny. Every time a new queer film or TV show comes out, I'm always a little bit apprehensive because I'm like, oh, they'll probably have a bi character. I wonder what it'll be like. And to see this bi man represented so beautifully, so wonderfully, without judgment. One of my favourite lines was from the character's mum. She said, "The B in LGBTQ+ is not a silent letter." And to see that on a show that I know millions of other people are watching, I just went, yes, like, awesome. When I watched Red, White and Royal Blue, I put it up on my Instagram, I put it on my Facebook, I was talking openly about it and talking with everyone about it, getting people's opinions, and compare that to when I first started watching queer TV shows like Queer as Folk when I was a kid and, you know, hiding with my little portable television in the middle of the night. I didn't want anyone to know that I was watching it, and now it's such a big part of my life getting to talk about queer pop culture and media. Worlds apart. It's not a secret I'm holding on to anymore. It's a shared experience being able to watch these things. So yeah, huge difference. And even what's represented on the screen is so different. It was a certain idea of what queerness looked like back then, and now we've gone into a far more diverse and less judgmental and open-minded sort of way that we're representing queerness, queer relationships, queer people. It's awesome to see.
The last queer-related TV show that I probably watched and successfully finished was The Ultimatum, Queer Love. What I really loved is that the conversations that the participants and the cast members were having with each other were so much more like diverse and so much more like deeper than the conversations that they were having in the heterosexual counterpart of the show. They were talking about things like gender and like what it means for them to like express themselves, and it showed how queer people really try to go deeper with their relationships and deeper with their connections with people and talk about things that matter more than just, nice weather we're having, and you look hot.
The last big queer show I watched was the kind of remake of A League of Their Own, which scratching all the itches, lesi content, sports, funny people as well. It's quite funny at times. Because if you go back and you watch the original movie, there might be some implications of homosexuality in there or whatever, but it's not sort of explicitly shown off. And it's good that we've got to a point where they can tell that story again in what would probably be a more accurate way, where a lot of them would have been gay, and that is an important part of the drama and the story being told.
And how would you say the representation has changed?
It's there, for one thing. We have representation, and the representation is very often it's mostly positive. The characters don't go through any more trauma than any other character. They live or they die according to the plot line, not because they are spawn of the devil and need to die.
I just love the idea that it's actually so mainstream. Could you imagine a TV series coming on board now without a gay character? No, I can't even imagine it. Can't even remember. Dawson's Creek. I remember Dawson's Creek, and they go, oh, it's a gay character, but he's pretty vanilla. He doesn't do much. But good on him. That's there. But now we're seeing kind of gay relationships played out, queer relationships played out on television. They're allowed to kiss. They're allowed to do all these things. Amazing. That's what the straight world has always had, we now have, because I think we're in charge of it more. Everyone wants to come to a gay party. They always have.
I feel like queer TV storytelling has changed immensely since the days of Queer as Folk. I think there was always a degree of I always felt really naughty, or watching the shows like Queer as Folk, which was important for its time, but in many ways it was exoticizing the experience of queer people because it was from a white male lens, and I never felt included in that conversation. I feel like now in terms of diversity, we're seeing diversity for diversity.
Even RuPaul's changed. I was watching a program on YouTube about how RuPaul has, she had things that might have been offensive to trans women that she's changed over the years. And now she's actually having trans women in her shows, which she never had before. So even you know, there's an evolution even within the drag community.
I think things have evolved and they're getting to where I like more, which is representing queer people in a way that fits in with the story, I guess. I love like a queer film that's specifically about a certain person in queer history, and we're going deep into that. That's beautiful as well, and that's needed. But also I love that we've now come to a point where the queer relationships are like just normalized in the film. They're not like this big like crazy thing. I don't know how to explain it in like words. I would really like more teenage and like young adult love movie series that are about like, you know, the romantic relationships whilst trying to live life and be in that teenage to young adult life, which is like such a crazy growth period for so many people. I feel like there's quite a few of those sort of movies out, but in like straight relationships. And I think it'd be really cool to have those sort of movies, but you know, the person is queer, person of color, deals with disability, like specifically disability as well. I also think super important to have more like autism representation in movie and film that isn't the generalized, like the stereotype autistic, I think, because that's like harmful. I know when I watch TV series and, you know, they make the autistic person seem a certain way, which they do in a lot of films, that's like harmful for me. Like when I'm watching, I'm like, oh.
Oh my god, imagine if I said I recently follow Queen Kong. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
Okay, so one of the main sort of queer content creators that I follow, mostly on TikTok, is 100% that Tim, who was actually Hanaconda, one of my best friends. She was on Drag Race with me. It's her brother, her little brother. And the reason why I follow him is because he's so just funny and joyful, and the content that he creates is just really something that we need, which is a laugh. You know, I think things get really serious. And so he's probably one of the main content creators that I follow, yeah.
A couple that I've been following for a while that are from Australia, they're Taz and Alicia, I believe is their name. Love their content, love them. They talk about everything, which is so important, and I love that they answer a lot of questions regarding like navigating queer relationships. They also do like funny stuff on the side. It's like their whole account isn't just their relationship. They also just show like them trying the new KFC chips that's come out, the new ice cream.
I do follow some people who post in relation to activities that are going on, demonstrations, what have you, but since Twitter became X, I've just sort of dropped off that completely. I can't figure out, you know, when you're on Twitter, you tweet. I mean, what do you do when you're on X?
I recently followed this Instagram couple who travel together. They're called Wonderful Wives. They're really cute. They're always going on adventures, and I love their content because I can save it for places that we could potentially travel, because it's still something that's in the back of my mind. Like, what if we go to a place and we won't be able to like hold hands or show affection publicly? That would kind of ruin my whole vacation. So thank you at Wonderful Wives for highlighting like the spots that you go to and where you are able to holiday and not like be worried about homophobia.
I'm grateful to be sitting here right now talking to you. I'm grateful that I'm me. I'm grateful that I don't have to pretend to be anybody else. I'm grateful that I'm allowed to express myself so freely, that my voice is heard. From a time when trans people had to live in darkness and on the fringes of society, we can now walk in the light and, enjoy community and enjoy society. I'm grateful when I go to work. I'm grateful to go into the office. I'm grateful to have a job. I'm grateful to be safely in an income. I'm grateful to be dressed by fashion designers. I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful.
Probably at the same time I felt grateful for being left-handed. Like, is gratitude a relevant feeling to have about just who you are? It's just who I am, and I guess I have got gratitude for that because I don't have to do the heterosexual wrangle that to me seems to be quite complicated.
Growing up in Malaysia and being told that being queer is mental illness, and if you're a gay man, you'll get HIV/AIDS and die, and that you're a bad influence to your siblings and all those things, and being punished for being queer. It's taken me a long time to unlearn all those things, and through community, through finding community and a lot of therapy to live an authentic life fearlessly, and finding gratitude that I can now express myself the way I am.
I feel grateful to be queer every hour of every day. I feel so lucky because I look back at what I've been through, and I'm so grateful to be where I am now, because there are many other timelines where I wouldn't be in this position. To be able to look back and know that I did a good job, and to be proud of who I am as a queer person.
My first experiences have shaped me as a person and informed everything that I know is important to me now, like going through feeling insecure about my sexuality, through not knowing whether I was non-binary or not, and doubting myself. That whole process has kind of just illuminated all of the parts of myself that I know to be true.
I'm grateful to be queer every day, really, because I think it's put me in the position to meet a lot of really cool and interesting people, whether it's like living really authentically as my queer self or engaging with other people who are doing the same. It always seems to make things better.
If I hadn't gone through what I had gone through in both negative first experiences and positive first experiences, I don't think that I could have been the person that I am today or the person that I'm striving to be.
I've definitely been through a lot of trauma, a lot of loss, a lot of growing, a lot of mistakes, and I think I would not have changed anything, as much as some of the struggles have been really difficult. It's really taught me a compassion and a sense of community, like a real driving sense for community, knowing that, if it was just about myself, I probably would have given up a long time ago.
I think a lot of my first experiences were not good, were full of pain, full of anguish, shame, full of what other people thought of me. And that is so different to who I am now. It's a cliche of that whole, it gets better, it gets better, they say it, but it's so true. When we don't make those safe places and supportive places and loving places for those first things to happen, we lose those people. And the world is worse for it.
I look back on those hard things and I'm like, they were not meant to happen, but they happened, and I can see the good in them now, because now I can be open with people and they can have that safe space that I didn't have. What can I give back so that, the next generation don't have to feel those feelings?